the list, but I'll say that as a person here in Western Colorado, I really feel like Representative Soper represents us really well. He's a balanced lawmaker. He does a great job of understanding our interests, communicating them in the legislature, and I'm really honored that he's here tonight to speak with us. So thank you so much, Representative Soper.
Thank you, Harrison. I appreciate being here. I also want to thank Ashley and Rosa. You guys have done a great job. The Western Colorado Horticultural Society for inviting me here this evening, back again this year. I certainly was honored to be here for the 80th birthday. That was a lot of fun. But tonight, I want to just tell you about what's happening in the legislature and the state of agriculture here in Colorado, and some of the things that I see going on that perhaps everyone ought to be thinking about. But first of all, I was told you should never start a speech without a joke. So this is my best effort. Why was the peach late to work? Well, that's close. It was a pit stop. So normally it seems like I'm always running late. And in the legislature we push every minute of the day to try to get as much done as possible. I know many of you would like us working less. I would too. But the reality is, it's amazing how much we can push through in 120 days. And then when we're not in session, we're working every single day for you. And that may be doing things like this autumn, we organized the World Comes to Grand Junction event, where we invited the consul generals from 5 different countries that have offices here in Colorado out to the Western Slope. Most of them had never crossed the Continental Divide to come to the Western Slope before. And one thing that people forget about when they talk about exports, and what does Western Colorado export a lot of? Well, yeah, water. that's definitely true. But aside from water, let's just say that's an involuntary export. A voluntary export are going to be things like agricultural products, peaches, wine. We could go down the list of other stone fruit, beef, poultry. We have agricultural products that are considered the highest quality around the nation and around the world. As a matter of fact, in 2019, the president of Taiwan came to Denver and we held a state dinner for her. It was the last one she had before the pandemic began. And as a state, we signed a memorandum of understanding to where when Taiwan imports American beef, or we export beef, depending on which direction you're looking at it from, Colorado is the preferred choice. And this was a tack-on agreement to a larger trade deal that the U.S. had. And that's worth $6 billion. We were just in Taiwan, my wife and I can tell you that I even take my vacations as an opportunity to continue to advance Western Colorado. And so I reached out to the American Embassy in Taiwan, and I said, I would like to meet with the head of the agricultural office, because what can we do to get something besides beef into Taiwan? And as we sat down and met with the U.S. agricultural representative, she started telling me, well, the only wines that are imported from the United States to Taiwan come from California and Washington and Idaho. And I was listening and I said, did you say Idaho? And she said, yes, they have a really good guy on the ground. So then we were talking about peaches, and I said, well, I represent about 95% of Colorado's commercial orchards. We're also known for peaches. What can we do to export peaches into the Taiwanese market? She said, well, there already are American peaches in Taiwan. They're from Idaho. To which I responded, Idaho? And she told us that apparently Idaho has some really good guy on the ground. So then we moved on to microchips, not the things you eat, but the ones you put in your cell phones. And we were talking about how Micron made these massive investments back into Idaho. So I've decided that the guy who's on the ground in Taiwan helping Idaho's economy, we can either compete head-to-head with Idaho legally or illegally. I haven't decided which, but certainly as a state we can do better. And that was the point that we really made. And so as we had these conversations in Taiwan privately, we reached out, and I know it's the editorial lead, it's a bad habit, I apologize. I reached out to our Office of Economic Development and International Trade, and they're now sending 2 individuals to Taiwan. And they're going to meet with the same folks that I met with privately, only officially as a state. And so the question might be, how can a representative in rural Western Colorado start to help those that I see in this room be able to add value to the products that you grow? How can we be able to sell more for a higher price point? Because ultimately that's what we want. Our costs are going to go up. So we're either going to innovate and we're going to find other ways to be able to make a living. It may come through tourism, which I'm 100% in support of. It may come from convincing a new generation of Americans that they need to eat more fruits and vegetables. But it may also come from building up our brand as a Western Colorado growing region to convince people around the world to pay a premium for what we do. And that could be, for example, $5 to $7 a piece, something that we would find astronomical here, but in Asia, the Japanese market, the Taiwanese market, fruit is considered the ultimate gift. And that's really what it should be here. You think about the work that it takes to grow a peach, for example. You go multiple years without producing any fruit from that tree after you've planted. Then you have a freeze. Then you have disease. Then you have the Japanese beetle. Then you have labor issues. Then you have water issues. Then you finally get the best crop that you can imagine, and the customer complains about the price point, and that's assuming the grocery store didn't knock down your price. So if we're going to be able to advance our part of Colorado and to continually be viable, it means looking beyond the United States for customers to buy what we already know is the best of the best, and reminding the outside folks of that. I do want to pivot because I would be remiss not to tell you about what's currently happening in the legislature. So I'm going to tell you first about the good, then the bad, and the ugly. And in that order. Unless you want me to go in reverse order, in which I could finish on the good. On the good side, as a state, we're also partnering with the United Kingdom, and we're going to be entering into a memorandum of understanding to engage in agritech. And I'm making a pitch that Western Colorado should be the testing ground for a lot of innovations that are going to be coming out of the United Kingdom. And we are a perfect environment because we're smaller farms, and there's probably going to be conforming legislation to be able to help with this. Some of the technology will help with weeds using AIs and lasers. Other technology can certainly concern pruning and harvesting of grapes, for example. So that's good news. For those of you who like raw milk, I don't know if you do or not, that's unpasteurized milk. We're going to be running legislation to help consumers be able to buy that easier. That was a big debate from 2005, and fast forward to 2024, we're actually going to get it done. So we're allowing people to have more choice. I know that farming is stressful. One bill that is going to be introduced will be one concerning behavioral health for farmers. And we certainly, as a state, do not want to forget farmers as we talk about the mental health crisis. The last that I have on my, I guess, good list bill would be the Colorado Department of Natural Resources testified on Friday that they are moving forward to fully implement 10% of the Colorado Water Plan. If you're like me, I looked at 10% and I said, in my world, 10% is a failure, especially since we started the Colorado Water Plan in like 2014, 2018. It's been a long time to have had a plan and to only be getting to implementation of 10%. But it's at least more than we've done in the past. And certainly the deal that we secured here on the Western Slope with the Shoshone Power Plant makes a big part of that plan come to reality. Now on to the bad. Wolves. Wolves are something that are going to continually plague Western Colorado from here on out. Parks and Wildlife have already released multiple wolf locations. They actually refuse to tell us as legislators exactly how many they have now released. So we believe that it's going upwards of probably 24 by now. Our challenge is going to be how we manage wolves. Right now, there's a group of legislators who are still upset that we were able to get the 10J rule in place, even though the governor vetoed our bill. And they're going to be running legislation this session to really try to undo the 10J rule. And 10J, just so you know, it treats wolves here in Colorado as an experimental population, which allows us to control the population using lethal means. It's the only way we could ever have wolves here in Colorado. I don't want wolves at all, but I certainly want the ability to shoot a wolf if it's attacking our livestock. And there's going to be an effort to try to pull back on that. If they do manage to pull back on that, we will be just like Idaho, only not in the good way that I was describing earlier, in the bad way. Idaho went for half a decade where they were unable to use lethal force for wolves, and that's why you don't really see Idaho issuing hunting tags, because they don't have the game to do so because the wolf population is so big. So we are going to do our job as legislators from the Western Slope, and we are going to push back heavy on this. But just know that just because wolves are on the ground doesn't mean that the wolf debate is over. It's actually only underway. The next thing that probably all of you have really thought about if you are selling to grocery stores is the merger between City Market and Safeway, which is Kroger and Albertsons. The Attorney General still hasn't made a decision on whether or not he's going to intervene in the merger. The state of Washington decided they were going to sue under Washington's antitrust laws to try to prevent the merger in Washington. I am pushing that our Attorney General actually intervene and call it an antitrust here in Colorado. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really, really a concern for most places on the Western Slope and on the Eastern Plains here in Colorado, especially to go from 2 to 1, so that's where you have 2 grocery stores and you're going to 1, or even 3 to 2. So you have 3 grocery stores in a community, you go down to 2. If you paid any attention, when we put wine into grocery stores, we lost, on average, 2 aisles within the grocery store across Colorado. Any grocery store you want to go into. They didn't add on to the grocery store's physical space. So if you were the supplier, your product just got knocked off. Now imagine in the produce section. Grocery stores are not going to enlarge the produce section, and they're not going to add more coolers. Coolers are expensive. It's a premium to get your product in there. And instead, what is going to happen is the reality is they'll use AI for purchasing, and they'll only go for the lowest price point. And that will put the squeeze on Colorado producers. California producers are pushing this because they know that they have the volume. They know that they also have the relationships with some of the big corporate executives. So that's the reason why we should definitely be concerned about consolidation within the grocery store industry, is the ability for Colorado farmers and ranchers to be able to get their product within the grocery store. And without choice, as consumers, I just have to buy what's on the shelf or what's in the cooler, or wait till harvest season and be able to buy it locally. But it's a concern, and that's why I'm continuing to push to intervene in the merger. Now the ugly. Yeah, I wish the world was a happy place all the time. It's not, I'm sorry. This session, there's going to be a bill to allow for local control of pesticides. This was an amendment on a bill last year that we were able to defeat, but now it's going to be a standalone bill that we're going to have to defeat. I've always liked local control. I believe people in their own communities should decide how to live their own lives. Pesticide is a different issue. And the reason why it's a different issue, bugs don't know boundaries of a political nature. So if I'm spraying for a bug in Delta or Mesa County or Montrose County, they don't know that the county line ended and that they're now going over into Garfield County. And that also means that you can have one area, like a city, that may not allow for spraying, and a certain population increases, and the other place does have spraying, and you actually may concentrate and make a problem worse. And that's why this bill is of grave concern. It can definitely put the squeeze on producers' abilities to control pests, which, as we know, we have problems here in the Grand Valley. Another ugly bill that's going to be coming forward is an effort to prohibit meat slaughter in Colorado. There's a brand new member who opposes the killing of animals. I respect everyone's beliefs, but quite frankly, if you're going to take your beliefs and now impose it on an entire population, that's a very dangerous position to be in. I love beef, I love meat. I think a lot of people here too, because I saw a lot of beef and chicken consumed tonight. I don't believe we should be limiting people's ability to choose. People should have the right to make their own decisions without a politician saying, you can't eat meat. Another ugly bill that is going to be coming forward this session that I'm quite concerned about is it's a bill to reintroduce the Wolverine. And on one hand, I could support a Wolverine reintroduction bill if the environment is right. The problem is, right now, it's on the heels of the wolf reintroduction, and I do not believe wolf reintroduction was done well. I believe that it was rushed through by environmentalists. It was out of the control of the public. It was imposing certain people's will on an entire population, and it's not fair to the wolf. Colorado, unlike the other western states, has a much larger population. You had Montana, Idaho, Utah. Colorado is still bigger than all those states combined. And so they have plenty of room for dangerous predators like a wolf to roam. Colorado at 6 million and growing, we're growing quite fast, the fastest growing state in the Rocky Mountain West. We have a much bigger tourist economy, outdoor recreation economy, and so it's not fair to put wolves in a conflict situation with humans all the time because we have a much greater population. And I do worry as we move down the path of talking wolverines or grizzly bears, because I have heard talk of grizzly bears, that's what I was going to mention next. That those are great to have in other states, but the ship sailed in Colorado when we became a very populous state and we became a very heavy tourist state. On my list of uglies, I do want to talk in my last third, before I start winding down here, about the legislative session and what I worry about as we're going into this particular session. Last session was incredibly ugly. We worked over a dozen Saturdays and a few Sundays. The majority party implemented what's called Rule 14 and Rule 16. Those are special legislative rules that end debate. So it means that I, as your elected representative, can't get up and say why I support or even why I oppose a bill. It's probably more important to tell you why I oppose a bill. But when all debate is cut off and we go straight to voting, that cuts off an important element of lawmaking. And that's something that is troubling to have seen used. What we're seeing this session is new rules concerning announcements and introductions. So the new rules say that an announcement or an introduction can only be tied to the work of the legislature, meaning for committees. So announcing the time a committee is going to meet. But that's a very important time to be able to highlight what's happening back in my district. I want to be able to stand up and say, there's real problems in Western Colorado. We have a Japanese beetle infestation. Or I want to be able to talk about something happy, like Delta High School just won the state championship in football. And it's important for members of the House of Representatives to be able to hear what's going on around our great state, because that type of news doesn't always make the newspapers. It don't make the Denver Post. And yet, that's something that's on my mind that members should be thinking about. Introductions, I also like being able to introduce notable Coloradans that come and visit. And someone who's notable, in my mind, is a rancher or a farmer. They don't have to win a Nobel Peace Prize. The other rule that they have implemented is guests on the floor. So in the rules that say that a member is allowed to bring a guest onto the floor of the House of Representatives. They have cut that down to where I need to ask the majority leader for permission 24 hours in advance. I have a problem with that. As a young man, actually as a kid, I was invited by my state representative onto the floor of the House of Representatives. And he took that time to explain what was going on, the debate that was happening in the Committee of the Whole, our Republican action, the pros and the cons. And I absorbed that. And that's what every Coloradan should be able to see, especially every kid should be able to see that. Not everyone who sits in the gallery is going to be able to know what's going on. As a matter of fact, most of the time when I hear from constituents, they tell me, it looks like you guys never listen to each other. It looks like Animal House down there. And it is, but it's organized chaos. But the ability for me to be able to talk to that individual who's traveled so far. Denver for us is at least 4 hours away. 3.5 if you're speeding a bit. But if you've made it that far, absolutely I want to talk to you. And to have it be cut off and constrained, I don't want to tell someone who I'm bringing onto the floor. It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to me. The last rule change that they have engaged in is for excused absences and online participation. Largely, online participation has gone away after the COVID-19 pandemic, though we still have it for certain exceptions. We do have what's called excused and unexcused absences. So if it's an unexcused absence, the member does not get paid for that day. If it's an excused absence, they would still get compensated. The problem with also, if you're unexcused, you could also be called in by the State Patrol, and they could actually arrest you and bring you to the Capitol. So that's another issue that hangs out there as well. So we don't allow members to play hooky without a really, really good excuse. Well, now they've issued a very finite list, and it talks about attending a funeral of a parent or a child, taking care of a sick parent or child, staying home because you have a contagious illness, and that's about it. And I said to the majority leader, I have a real problem with your list. As a representative from rural Colorado, what if the mountain passes are closed? What if there's a snowstorm and I can't make it back to Denver? I absolutely should be able to participate online and to continue to represent my district effectively, knowing that there's an impediment for me being able to get back to Denver safely. And I said, what if I'm called to serve on a jury? That's a civic duty that I also want to be a good role model on. Or what if I'm called to be a witness in a criminal trial? There's speedy trial issues. They're not going to set aside a criminal trial waiting for me to show up to testify until the session is over. They could certainly issue a bench warrant. And then, where should I be at that moment in time? Her response to me was, well, you could just fly. Just fly. That is not a good reason. That's not how the world works. That shows how Denver feels about rural Colorado. And it's that one comment that should tell you what we're up against in Denver every single day. Denver does not understand us in rural Colorado, and it's up to us to break down those barriers. Denver is certainly not going to ever care about us. It's up to us to make Denver care about us. That's why we've deliberately been more proactive, and I want to thank a number of you in this room, because over the interim, my wife and I invited a couple of legislators out during the Peach Fest, and we brought them out to several of your orchards that I see here in the room. tremendous. We're trying to develop allies on the other side of the hill. We had the Capital Development Committee out here. They were not supposed to make any other stop aside from visiting the regional center in Colorado Mesa University. And we talked the committee into going out to Talbot's and actually seeing peach production at the height of harvest. And those members have not forgotten that. We need to do more of that. It's not good enough to be able to arrive in Denver and talk about the hardships of how far it is just to get to Denver, or the fact that we may pay shipping both ways on everything, not just what we engage in for business, but even running the town. That has a cost. It's up to us to also make sure that the individuals who certainly have more weight than I do see the part of Colorado that we love. Because we can never convince them to love the Western Slope. They're always going to view it as a playground place. But to start to see why it's such a special place, why we choose to live here, why we will stand up and defend the Western Slope, and why we do take offense when certain bills attack our industry, attack who we are as people. If they can see that, they're less likely to just march with the other side. And our ability to actually protect what we love for the next generation, at least, will still be there. I don't want to sound too pie in the sky, because I do know that we have made some inroads. But it's going to be a long road. And don't give up. I need every single person in this room to continue on this march with us. I don't want anyone leaving here, calling anyone names, but instead to think about how you can invite someone from the Front Range, albeit if they're a representative or a senator, that would really help. Come out here and get to know us, because that's how we're going to start pushing back and effectuating proactive change for the Western Slope. Thank you so much. God bless you, and I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.